Um, I think we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Our participant, Mr. Faisal from Bukala Park, is struggling with a bit of internet connectivity because of all the work from home which has been going on. Give us 30 more seconds before we jump right into the topic today. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so first of all, let me welcome everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today titled Same Day Deliveries and Its Impact on Businesses Across Southeast Asia. Before we go into the webinar, first, let me take quick few seconds to um, me and the entire Locust family. We pray for safety for each of yours and your loved ones around you in these trying times, right? We hope we pass through this tide really soon, right? And we thought this is a great opportunity, as a lot of people are working from home, to utilize some of this time to learn about new topics, some interesting topics, and that's the reason behind organizing this webinar today. Let me start with some introductions. Let me introduce myself. My name is Krishna Khandelwal. I take care of the entire business for Locus globally, with bunch of experiences ranging from investment banking to software sales, and even polymer research couple of years back. Um, with me, I have today Mr. Faisal. He heads supply chain partnerships at Bukala Park. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of what Bukala Park is. Faisal, I would ask you to request you to say a few words. Welcome everybody for this webinar, and then we can jump right into the topic of discussion today.
Okay, sure. Thank you. First off, thank you, Lucas, for accommodating this webinar and creating the platform to share the knowledge to all of us. And first off, also for all the people here, wishing all the families a lot of health during this current time. My name is Faisal Horizon. Indeed, head of the supply chain partnership at Bukalapak, where my current focus is finding the key partners on how we can make sure that we can excel even more as a business for Bukalapak. And that will be mainly focusing on how do we set up the right infrastructure and the ecosystems when it comes to the movements of the goods and having the right stakeholders to do so. When it comes to my experience, the majority of my career has always been in Europe for about 6 years. However, it has always been a personal ambition for me to go to Southeast Asia because it was really clear about the growth that it was about to face. And now, having the opportunity for being 1.5 years in Indonesia, I truly have immersed myself on looking on how supply chain is developing in a quick pace because it's really being, how to say it, is being pushed because the increase of demand and the increasing of transactions has resulted to a lot of opportunities of development, and that is something that I would like to share with you guys as well today when it comes to the same day deliveries.
Awesome. Thank you, Faisal, for an interesting introduction. And Thank you for taking time out to join us in the webinar today, and I'm super excited to kickstart this, and I hope same is the case
Same.
with all the participants today. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, let's try to set up some agenda for today so that people are aware of what topics we'll be covering today, and we'll be leaving. We're hoping we'll be able to leave some time towards the end of the webinar discussion for some Q&A so that people can ask you some questions around your experiences
Sure.
to run such a large scale of operations at Bukala Park. We'll be covering the broader aspects of e-commerce and what is it mean for supply chain logistics in general, specifically focusing on last mile deliveries. Then we'll go down to our main topic of same day deliveries, and with Fazal's help, we'll try to understand the developments which are happening all across Southeast Asia, the challenges, and what does he believe are the best ways to solve those challenges, and with some conclusions and takeaways from the overall discussion today. Yeah. If we, I think a lot of people have seen these charts and numbers, and I just, there's no point in me repeating it, but let me just try to put some new perspective, specifically from Southeast Asia perspective. And I also want to bring some global perspective from an end consumer demand side, whether it's in Europe or US or Southeast Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh kind of countries. The the exponential growth in the internet users has been just mind blowing. It's like the fastest growth we have seen, and the result of this or the impact of this in businesses B2B, B2C alike is just too tremendous in Southeast Asia as a region, right? And that's one of the reasons why Locus as a company, and I'm sure Fazal mentioned on what prompted him to move from Europe back to Southeast Asia. It's primarily some of the exponential growth in the internet users, and because of that, the growth in commerce coming because of that. In nutshell, the overall Southeast Asian e-commerce business, or what we call economy, has broadly tripled in last 4 years, and in the next 5 to 6 years, the same kind of growth rate is expected to be achieved. I think we all of us are seeing around us the impact. All of us are part of that growth as well. What does it mean for logistics, and what kind of scale and size are we talking about, right? And this probably is a language which a lot of logistics supply chain professionals in e-commerce industry would understand. Back in 2015, on an average across Southeast Asia, if I look at the last mile deliveries, on an average, there were about 700,000 to 800,000 shipments being delivered every single day, and that has come to about 3 to 3.5 million shipments every single day across Southeast Asia, right? And you can see the countries where the growth is highest, right? With Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia growing at 25% CAGR year on year over the last 5 to 6 years, right? Um, let's start talking about the same day deliveries, right? But before that, I wanted to share some interesting statistics, right? Today, across Locus platform, which is what I'm representing on webinar today, we process over 2 million shipments every single day. Um, and if I have to give you a statistics of what is the scenario of same day delivery on our business, about 4 years back, less than 5% of shipments were same day delivery. 5% of the overall volumes being transacted onto Locus platform. Today, more than 40% of the overall volumes, and I gave an example of average volume, which ranges somewhere north of 2 million shipments a day. 40% of those shipments are same day delivery planned, right? So this has been the exponential growth where the same day delivery, as the e-commerce is becoming more and more prevalent, this component of the overall share of e-commerce deliveries in form of same day has just skyrocketed, right? And I'm sure I don't need to introduce you this to this concept, but this is not only a Southeast Asian phenomena; it's actually a global phenomena. Let me go ahead and say that some of the innovations and the volumes which we are seeing getting processed in form of same day delivery in Southeast Asia is just a couple of years ahead of Europe and US, right? In a lot of ways, the region has experimented, and in a lot of ways, the region has optimized the same day delivery mechanism, which some of the Western world countries are still struggling to figure out, right? So, a great job to everybody who is on the call. And one of the players who is leading this entire same day delivery concept in Southeast Asia, Bukala Park. We have the privilege, Fazal is representing that. And within the compliance thing, whatever he could share, I'm sure we'll be all benefiting from that.
Yes.
Um, this slide essentially sums up what I believe Faisal is going to cover in the next few slides, and as well as at Locus, we believe that the same day delivery, specifically from a Southeast Asian perspective, is a result of both the increase in convenience of online shopping by the end consumers, at the same time, clubbing that with the immediate access to product in form of stationary retail, right? We believe that the same day delivery is going to be the next revolution or evolutionary step in case of parcel logistics, right? Um, I wanted to set some context before we go into the nitty gritties and the basic and diving deep into the same day delivery concepts. Um, let's start that with first understanding what do we mean by same day deliveries, right? And I'm sure this slide doesn't cover the exhaustive set of models which exist in same day delivery, but it does represent more than 90% of what is out there from a Southeast Asian perspective, right? Fazil, would you love to cover
Yeah.
on what are the various same day delivery models which various businesses across Southeast Asia are
Yeah.
covering, and of course
Sure.
not limited to Bukala Park, but in general your
Yeah.
experience across Southeast Asia.
Yeah, definitely. So, what I keep seeing in the Southeast Asian region is that we can see the rise of multiple ways. So we have, for example, the instant on-demand delivery. It's something that that we're already familiar with when it comes to food delivery, right? When we order a certain pizza or whether we order some other meals. However, this service has extended to this whole e-commerce platform, and people are willing to pay a certain amount to have this service in place. On the other side, what we have is that delivery is being done within 24 hours of the purchase. So that's also a disclaimer that multiple platforms are providing. Hey, at least we will deliver within 24 hours if a certain cutoff is met. So this could be like 8 p.m. at night, or this could be like 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. What we also see, so all orders that happens after 2 p.m., we see that it's going to be delivered the next day, but still within the range of 24 hours. Another concept that we see is that whatever the delivery SLA is, the clock starts ticking once the seller is actually confirmed that they have received the order and that they will start processing it. So for several goods on e-commerce platforms, this is what they maintain. So they can promise, hey, we'll have the same day delivery or the 24 hours delivery, but the clock starts ticking once the seller confirms. So this is something that we're currently seeing right now.
Yeah. And I'm assuming like each of these models could be associated with the type of products, right? Instant on demand deliveries more
Yes.
associated with food and groceries,
Yeah.
and the other two models probably associated with mobile phones, electronics, some of the furniture
Yeah.
items, etc.
Yeah, true. However, but you do also see that for several e-commerce platforms, and even whether these are goods like cell phones, it is still possible to have the instant and on-demand delivery. So that's the quite amazing part. What's happening here in the Southeast Asian region compared to the Netherlands, for example. It took like Netherlands a decade to have at least same day delivery for electronics, and then they will still charge you like 12 euros or even 6 euros. However, here in Indonesia, I could easily pay for about what compared to euros or dollars, that would be just like $2 or €2, and I still get that instant delivery.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting how this is expanding across different segments, and not the instant delivery is getting expanded to segments outside of groceries and food as well.
Yes.
Um, if I sorry, yeah. So I know you have pretty interesting insights over here, Faisal. So let's just try
Yeah.
to pass that on to the participants as well. So we talked about the growth of e-commerce. We talked about the impact of that on the last mile deliveries. We talked about how same day delivery is no longer a concept but becoming a mainstream. And we are seeing that a lot of players are adopting this, including Bukalapak. And it's not only relevant to Southeast Asia, but it's we are seeing that across global e-commerce ecosystem. um, from your perspective, what is leading to this massive shift in same day deliveries? Like, what is leading to that consumer not willing to wait for a day for their shipments to arrive? Right? What are the various reasons which is leading to this massive transformational shift in same day deliveries across logistics space in Southeast Asia?
So that's also a thing. Let me explain that in multiple ways. So first, we can have a look on the history of these certain countries in Southeast Asia. For example, indeed, in Indonesia, it was the concept of the ojek. Having same days deliveries was something that has already been available since the 1980s. And the reason why is
Wow.
technically in Indonesia, it's just not cab drivers or buses, but another additional public transport was what we call the ojeks. These are people with a motorcycle actually stand by in a certain corner and waiting for orders, for example, personal transportation. However, these people has also been used in order to have like quick deliveries. The only thing that they want to make sure of is that, for example, me having a person, an object that I can truly trust to send goods, for example, if I need to send something across another area of Jakarta, then I could trust this person because I have his phone number and I'm already familiar with this person. Let me send these goods directly to my friend or my uncle or my other family members. So this concept has already been familiar in Indonesia. However, with the digitalization, like for example, implementation of Gojek or Grab, this whole ride hauling app has created more transparency and has also made it more efficient to combine the supply and the demand. So there was a huge supply of ojek drivers, but there was also a huge demand of transportation, whether it's personal transportation or whether it's shipment of the goods. And due to the transparency that these applications provided, has resulted to shifting certain workloads or shifting actually certain volumes to go towards these Gojek drivers. So in the past, you would not trust an Gojek driver to send a laptop with a value of what, a couple of $100s. But now, with the application and its transparency, and the insurance that's also being provided, more and more people and more sellers are actually using this platform in order to accommodate these same day deliveries. So what I'm trying to say here is that the history of Indonesia is already set up and able to provide these same day deliveries. It only required a little bit more of tech that could support in the transparency and the efficiency of this whole information flow and confirmation whether the goods are being sent. So that was definitely one of the important variables in place to have
And
the
do
same day
you
delivery.
this and you think this extends to other countries in Southeast Asia as well, right? I mean, the aspects which led to existence of ojek as a transportation model in Indonesia from 1980s. If you look at the other geographies like Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam,
Yeah,
from a geographical and a demographical distribution of population, from that perspective, it's not that different, right? So
no.
um, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. One of the reasons why Southeast Asia leads some of the Western economies in the world in the same day delivery is because infrastructure always existed, right? And then we have this new age tech companies coming in and bridging that gap of facilitating the this supply over to this new emerging demand, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
would you want to talk
additional
about
benefit.
the order density and the yeah? Sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
yeah, sure. So on the next slide is indeed that with the increasing of orders, and we saw in the statistics that, for example, in Indonesia itself, in 2019, there's this whole GMV of $40 billion, and with an increasing trend in 2025 to be expected to become $130 billion. However, those numbers are being accommodated by all those transactions, and having countries such as Indonesia and Philippines that has high density of people also results that majority of these orders are also dense. So this high density is also something that could contribute in a more efficient way and less costly if you would compare this to any other Western countries. So these so, for example, the majority of the population of Indonesia is located in Jakarta. That could accommodate like 70% of the economy. All transactions actually occurring in this dense Jakarta area, or whether it's Surabaya, and that could help, for example, companies such as Bukalapak or Locus, for example, having the right algorithm to create an optimal route. And this also results that a lot of logistical players are tapping in this whole last mile delivery part, and they try to open up as much agents as they can, and they try to collaborate with as much e-commerce platform as they can, because they're technically chasing this um, density. So the more orders they can obtain, whether it's from Bukalapak or any other players, the more consolidation they can do, having a higher density for their trips. A third part of it is the consumptive and the impulsive consumer, with increasing income, especially of the middle class. We see an increase of the consumption of the current population in Indonesia. And it's also due to the rise of social media that people get continually impulses of what's actually available. So easily, when there are certain trends of, let's say, sneakers in this picture, then you can see that a lot of transactions are also being triggered due to this rise of social media and the transparency of the current trends that are being sold at the moment. So that's something that you that's also something that's really, really impacting the current same day deliveries in Indonesia, for example.
Yeah, and I mean, to be very frank, I think I was personally I was kind of late to the entire e-commerce party, but ever since I've joined the entire e-commerce gang in terms of ordering stuff online, I could see that I've become um, increasingly impulsive to buy things, right? And I guess the if I have to sum up what's happening from a consumption perspective, the amount of urbanization which is happening in Southeast Asian countries, it's just way too much compared to what we are seeing everywhere else in the world. The GDP per capita, which is the definition of developing economies per se, that's increasing, right? So which means more discretionary spend available in people's hand, and then the innovation of new tech and platforms like Bukalapak, Lazada, Tokopedia coming in, which makes this entire process seamless, right? Um, Sum it up with high order density, and to be very frank, I wasn't even aware that OJEX existed in Indonesia. And now that you mentioned, it kind of makes sense on why the same day delivery is the fastest growing concept in Southeast Asia compared to other economies in the world. Yeah. Um, if I think now that we have established on what do we mean by same day deliveries and what are the various operating models, if you were, and the reasons behind that happening, I think we should probably go and dive deep into some of the challenges which people face. when it comes to same day delivery, right? And we will try to cover as many of them as possible, time permitting. But Faisal will pick up some of the critical ones, which I believe people struggle to get answers on, right? And
Yeah.
the first common understanding which is out there, and think of me as a person who is in layman from outside of supply chain logistics industry locally, let's say in Indonesia or Thailand. My assumption is that the cost of same day delivery is relatively higher compared to any other mode of delivery models out there, right? I would love to understand, is this true? And if it's not true, why? Or if it is true, how much high cost are we talking about from a same day delivery perspective?
Yeah. Christian, I would like to challenge that statement because yes, many people think that cost of same day delivery could be higher. Uh, Technically, it's really dependent on who you collaborate with. Because if you are able to define the right stakeholders where you can shift that workload, for example, I have an additional party that has such a great infrastructure, which is able to consolidate volumes of multiple platforms, then it could happen that actually the cost of same day delivery could be lower if I would that do on my own. Because the challenge I would have if I would do that on my own, that if I have a certain cutoff, let's say for example, 12 p.m., then the amount of orders that's coming in or flowing in is not enough to have that full utilization of my fleet. However, if I'm able to shift this volume to a partner that can consolidate this um, deliveries, then it could happen that the amount of what they're charging me could be less if I have my own fleet. So that's something I like to challenge here. So it's not necessarily the case that that will be more expensive. However, we still need to look whether it applies for all products because it could, for example, be the situation that if you have a certain stable demand when it comes to FMCG and it's a repeating order and you can fully utilize your fleet, then that's something that you can um, assess where the tipping point is, right? So where's the crossing point where my uh, last mile delivery party is actually becoming more expensive if I would do that on your own. So that's something that you really need to assess case by case because it could happen that
Yeah.
technically cost of same day delivery could be cheaper.
That's interesting, right? So you, to I think some of the questions are also coming in. Let me try to bring a couple of pieces which you mentioned together. So you talked about the cutoff time for consumers being one of the components which could lead to higher aggregation of demand. You talked about
Yeah,
asset utilization. You also talked about effective usage of third-party network which is out there, right? And
yeah, yeah,
um, these are some of the components which essentially wants me to talk about the process part of it. I think one of the and we are a deep tech platform, right? So we want to associate every problem in the world with technology. Unfortunately, that's not the case, right? And the way you described, it seems it is a lot about challenges which people face as far as process is concerned, right? And um, I would love to understand about the process and tech integration. I like and what are the various challenges which people face when it comes to integrating a good tech with a finely defined blueprint of a process,
yeah,
because you covered a lot of aspects of the ecosystem, and I would love to understand what are the various challenges when people start putting down a fine blueprint and associated tech with that.
yeah. Okay, okay. So indeed, one of the most important part is before we even start on deploying or implementing um, same day delivery, let's just start off on having your blueprint in place. So where does this order come from, right? So for example, the customer, and that information leads to action. So these having the blueprint in place. So for example, hey, where is the order coming in? When should it be processed? Where should I send that information to? Who needs to pick it? And who will pick it up for the delivery that it eventually leads to the delivery to the end consumers. Why is this blueprint so important? Because it also sets the expectation for each stakeholders that comes into place. So for example, if I have the right blueprint in place and I want to implement the technology, if I have my last mile delivery person, he wants to deliver at the correct address. What does my blueprint tell me? That if I request an order from a customer, one of the things that could help, especially in Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia, is not just the address, but it's also the information of the lat long, so your geotag, right? If you have that in place in your blueprint, those are actually information that triggers the input that we need to compile when we're going to build this whole tag platform. Because the lat long will eventually be used for the last mile delivery man to have his optimal route to go to that destination. So when it comes to technology, so prior to building something or implementing something, let's just make sure that the blueprint is in place, that the whole information and the content of information is clear, that could lead to an efficient execution of this delivery.
Yeah. And I think there is a lot of underestimation of the importance of laying down a good process, right?
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, a good technology platform should be seen as an enabler of that finely defined blueprint, right? Right from
Yes.
the cutoff time for consumers to the cutoff time for sellers to accept the orders, to
Yes.
define SLAs for the third party logistics players, and then comes the what we call the agile tech infrastructure, right? I think a lot of reliance has been there in the supply chain logistics ecosystem specifically when it comes to using tech, right? And we're talking essentially about 24 hours delivery, and in some cases even few hours of deliveries. For you to automate different manual processes and for you to make decisions which typically are made by human beings, it's going to be impossible for you to process the kind of volumes which are going through in the same day delivery model across Southeast Asia, right? i would
Yeah.
I think you guys have done a phenomenal job of implementing a good agile tech infrastructure. How did you go about it, and like what were some of the challenges which you faced when it comes to uh, creating an agile tech infrastructure versus a static, rigid one, the which has been crowding the entire supply chain ecosystem for the last few decades now?
Hmm. Okay. Clear. So the nice part about logistics is actually it's not just a game, but it's also the ground game. And the beauty of the ground game is everything is tangible. So for any feedback that we receive from the drivers or whether we receive from the customers, that's directly feedback that we need to process and see the potential improvement. So one quick example is that if we see that certain deliveries are being delayed, or we see that there are several complaints when it comes to the deliveries or there are rejections, how is this being, for example, logged? Or how do we make sure that this data is also being used on improving the services that we provide? And also, it helps us in making certain business decisions, whether we indeed want to maintain the same day deliveries or if we want to extend our service levels to multiple days.
Yeah.
So that's actually really the why does it need to be agile, because the ground game provides us so much feedback that it could also lead to cost efficiencies.
Yeah. And I think if I kind of taking this and covering it up, the other aspects of the challenges, right, in the interest of time, in our experience, we have also seen there is low expertise in supply chain ecosystem, right? And you and I have discussed a couple of times in past. It
Yeah.
actually starts from the educational system in a lot of countries, right? Supply chain was not
Yes.
even um, like an option for people to do their expertise in, right? And
Yes.
I think technology and agile tech could play a great role in filling that gap which exists in terms of expertise in supply chain ecosystem in general across Southeast Asia.
Yes.
I think the biggest challenge which we are seeing, which most of our customers are facing across Southeast Asia, is that the customers' expectations are becoming borderline unrealistic. I mean, um, to think about it, for somebody to have an express delivery of a furniture item, right? I think in to some level, brands would have to step in and say no to consumers. That sorry, guys, we don't think you need a sofa or a bed in next 4 hours. You can wait for a few days before that, right? So this ever increasing expectations of consumers is probably a challenge, but I think a lot of brands should come together and start saying no to consumers. That no, you don't need a same day delivery, you don't need an express delivery, you can wait it out for a few days, and if
Yes.
not, you have to start shelling out a lot more money for that, right? So
Indeed, Krishna.
um,
It's really the
I
preference
think
drift.
yeah,
We consumers are spoiled. I gotta agree on that one because eventually, what you also see is that this whole same day delivery was such an competitive advantage to, how say, to attract customers, and they get accustomed
yeah.
to it, and it becomes a certain standard that they just being spoiled, and they want to keep it. They don't want to let it go.
Absolutely. And I think this is now getting spreaded to the rural areas, and we will try to cover the impact of that on the cost component, right? On how e-commerce penetration in rural areas is, and with the concept of same-day delivery, expectations for that to exist in rural areas also is another big challenge according to us, which we are seeing, right? So if I kind of sum it up all together, uh, if the process blueprinting is done well and an agile tech is selected to support that process blueprinting, there is a very real chance that the same day delivery cost, which is assumed to be way higher compared to normal delivery models, could actually be lower than that. And thanks to the higher order density which exists across Southeast Asian economies, um, then there's a real chance that a good process blueprinting and tech could actually lead to a lower cost of same day deliveries, right? And a lot of people are asking. I think this understanding that the cost is always higher for same day delivery. I think it was not limited to me. I think a lot of people assume or think that it's higher, right? And thank you for actually challenging that and mentioning that it's not always the case. And uh, I'm sure you guys have done wonders in achieving that optimization, which is why you guys are growing so fast at Bukala Park, right? Um, if if I look at the, I mean, so let's look at what's happening to to the impact of same day deliveries on customers, right? There was a quick survey which was done very recently by NCR. We kind of picked up some statistics from there, and this was done over thousands of consumers across Southeast Asian economies. 51% of customers now prefer same day deliveries. The most important part, which some of you guys are asking in your questions as well, um, consumers are actually willing to pay for it, which was not the case few years back. 74% of people who want same day delivery actually are willing to pay for it, right? And I think that's where this could be an option not only to uh, this could be an option not only to get loyalty of customers, this could also be an option to actually generate additional revenue for the e-commerce companies, right? One another challenge which I don't believe anybody has found a solution yet, right? And that includes, I can safely say, even Bukala Park and locals, is the tier two cities and different islands. The cost associated with that is just way too high from a same day delivery perspective, right? I think all the other components is it's pretty reasonable, and in the with the kind of propensity from customers to pay for it, all of these, whether it's intra-city within same island, intra-city between different islands, but major cities in those islands. But when you talk about tier two cities in different islands, that's where the challenge essentially comes. I guess very soon some of the logistics companies are going to come and set up the network over there, which might lead to solving some of those problems, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. I mean, we all knew on how savvy the customers are becoming, but this statistics was just mind blowing for me. Faster deliveries, of course, we all know it makes your consumers happy, right? But let's try to measure what is the impact of this. And if you don't end up doing the same day delivery or the faster deliveries, what is the impact of that on customer experience, right? On an average, across Southeast Asia, uh, every time the transit time increases, the number of happy customers decreases by about 10 to 15 percent, right? And if you look at various countries where they are today, the Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, the total transit time is somewhere about 91 hours on an average. Of course, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and we'll talk about the reasons for these compared to Malaysia and Vietnam, right? But look at this. On an average, Malaysian customers have to wait for 5.8 days versus the regional average of 3.3 days, right? So I think a lot of companies have now really should now really look forward to increasing the same day delivery component, given how much your consumers are now looking for this and how much it impacts your customer experience. Over 90%. So if you go ahead and go on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram for any of the large e-commerce marketplaces, right? You would realize that 90% of consumer complaints and the negative feedback are actually tied to two things. One is the transit time, and second is the late deliveries, right? That is the importance of driving customer experience and getting loyalty from your customers. Same day delivery or not, I think one thing all of us have to accept is the importance of fulfillment or supply chain, which was always, in Fazal's word, a dirty man's job, is now becoming a key core differentiation for large companies. It's one of the reasons what companies use is to differentiate from one another. And I think this kind of chart sums it up really, really well on that. Thanks to Faisal for it. His recent trip to Bangkok, he kind of gave an idea on why in Thailand the transit times are lowest because essentially
Yeah.
you have a logistics company sitting somewhere in the basement of
Yeah.
a large mall. Faisal, you want to
Okay,
share
so
that
that's
anecdote with
also,
us?
yeah, yeah, definitely. And this is also what I'm meant with make sure that in your blueprint you define the right stakeholders. And when it comes to last mile delivery, Carry Express has actually made a very nice move on becoming a preferred vendor, so a preferred stakeholder. Why? Because they are located as close as possible to the sellers. So this is, for example, the Platinum Mall, where it has like hundreds or maybe even a thousand of small shops, and the amount of transactions on a daily basis is just immense. It's huge. A similar thing that's what we also have in Jakarta is the Tanah Abang for textile. But what I want to go to is that for Carry Logistics to be the ones that's located at the mall, and in the right picture, you can actually see the guy from Carry Express to collect all these orders at all these shops. So preventing the shop owner or the seller to close the shop and go to the counter to provide the goods. No, it's really the additional service what Carry Express is providing to ensure that their cutoff to leave the mall for on-time same-day delivery is being met. So they actually increase
Yeah,
their influence. So they control their influence by being at that location. You know what? Instead of you
yeah,
giving it to me, I'll be the one that's picking it up before my cutoff,
yeah,
before I have to leave this mall. So this is a great
yeah.
example why they are able to meet.
Awesome. I think so. We talked about challenges. We talked about the growth of same day deliveries, right? Let's kind of try to see if we can help people out in addressing some of those challenges. You and I broadly covered a pretty good ground on the defined blueprinting of processes before you even start venturing into same day delivery as a business model, right? We also
Yes.
talked about agility of a good tech platform which kind of goes seamlessly, integrates seamlessly with the defined process blueprint, right? Um, Talk to us about from a supply chain logistics perspective, right? And we what are some of the things we should be focusing on? And we tried to sum up some of the things over there: driver preferences, last mile delivery mobile app, freelance riders, stakeholder management. But would love to understand from you that once you have a good tech platform, once you have a good defined process blueprint, how should people go and what should they consider when they think of implementing same day deliveries, which could make it a big success for them as well as it has been for you guys?
So, emphasizing also to several of these points, Krishna. That's what you mean, sorry?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So we think that these are some of the key
Okay.
core components people should
Yeah,
be
yeah,
focusing on, right? We just love to
yeah.
understand
Sure.
from you if you want to validate it, challenge it, or
Yeah,
add something
true,
on top
true.
of it.
Yeah, true, true, definitely. So, yeah, like I said earlier, also that in Indonesia, these whole freelance driver, which we call ojek, they've have become such an enabler to have this same day delivery, and they eventually also becomes the ones that disrupts current logistics companies that they have to meet that expectation of same day deliveries. And companies such like, for example, Grab and Gojek has also supported these drivers to become more tech savvy because they technically have to use the application to have these orders. That has resulted to a lot of delivery men that knows how to deal with, for example, a TMS solutions like as Locus, such as Locus. For okay, I'm tech savvy. I know how to use this application, and that also becomes a certain preference of riders that you want to have, right? However, this comes with a certain challenge, and that's the part of change management. So we do see a lot of change management going on because with the adoption of this technology, not everyone can adopt and not everyone is willing to accept. So for applications such as Grab or Gojek, um, has also resulted to a lot of demonstrations of the ojek drivers because for using that applications, they are not the ones that are in control to determine the price, right? So the price is being set for them, and that's something that not everyone's willing to accept. But also when it comes to delivery man using an application, back then he was mainly just doing it manual based on paper, and he does not see the benefit of using this phone and being disturbed by the phone, and that could eventually also maybe result to accidents because he was looking at the phone. Those are some feedbacks that we also see. But in a way, we need to make sure also that whoever is the stakeholder in all of this, whether it's the driver, whether it's the company, let's just make sure that there's a full transparency in place that's being driven by the blueprint on okay, what information do I need to provide here? So, for example, you
Yeah.
can make sure that a driver is willing to use the application because we can provide you the exact route that you need to do to get to your destination to make that delivery.
Yeah.
So, what's happening here with this whole tech development? Companies such as old logistic companies, for example, JNE or other logistics companies in Indonesia, are actually being challenged to serve same day deliveries in the same efficient way as we have what as we have seen with Grab and Gojek, and that also has results to multiple logistics companies coming to rise in the last mile delivery. So, for example, Ninja, for example, Rara, TripLogic. So, a lot of companies start to enter this business because they see
Yeah.
the increase of the transactions and the density.
So if I kind of sum it up, a lot of focus on the rider preferences. Of course, the ecosystem has benefited from the Gojek and the Grab kind of ride-hailing applications growth, um, and the adoption of tech by freelance riders and a defined responsibility for various stakeholders in the entire process. Right. I could not agree more than that. More than this, I think. focusing on the last mile delivery, the riders, the various stakeholders like dispatch managers, warehouse managers, extremely critical for the success of same day delivery uh, from a Southeast Asia perspective. I mean, and all of us live in, most of the participants on this call, they live in metro cities in Southeast Asia, and we are all aware of traffic challenges and road restrictions and one ways and two ways, and Philippines having route restrictions. Um, what are some of the challenges which you believe people need to overcome when they're planning for same day deliveries? And we have tried to put some of the ideas over here, but please feel free to kind of add on top of it. Fazil, we just wanted to do a quick time check with everybody. We started late by about 6-7 minutes because of tech issues. We have about 7 to 10 minutes more to wrap up the webinar. But just wanted to do a quick time check so that both of us are aligned on the time frame, and we respect the time for all the people who have joined the webinar today.
Just to add on this point of overcoming logistics challenges, what I really like to stress out is that the SLA adherence. So the unique part of this one is SLA adherence is not just to the end consumer anymore. Now it's really to all stakeholders in the ecosystem. So for example, the SLA adherence from my seller, because if an order comes in, I want to make sure that this seller processes this order within a certain period of time, because we want to commit to this experience of a same day delivery. So if a seller only
Yeah,
processes this at 8 p.m. at night and there are no more logistical providers available to do the last mile delivery, then the whole experience of a same day is not happening for that customer, and that will be delivered in the next day. When it comes to indeed of Indonesia, what makes that smart geocoding so important? With the high density that we have, it's also difficult to really locate the correct address. And that's where the smart geocoding really helps us. And that also becomes one of the important input that, for example, a customer needs to provide. So in my previous order of buying furniture, I actually had to share my geotag to the website to ensure that they can really deliver the goods at the exact location as I have set my geotag on. So these are really
yeah.
the challenges that we try to overcome in Indonesia to really have this great same day delivery experience.
Absolutely. And I think the next thing after defining a good process blueprint and choosing a good tech is to ensure that you have accommodated for some of these challenges, which are the most obvious reasons for delays or not able to deliver within the committed timelines to customers. So you would rather not promise a same day delivery to a customer if you can't meet that, because then the expectations are just skyrocketing from a customer's perspective, and that leads to
Yeah,
pouring of bad feedback on Twitter and many social media platforms, right?
yeah,
So
true.
um, I, I completely agree with you on this one, right? And I think you and I talked about it. When we're talking about less than 24 hours of deliveries, right? We're talking about few hours of deliveries. There is just no way that you can run your operations the way you have been running for the past few decades from a supply chain logistics perspective, right? And we kind of picked up some of the snapshots from this company called Big Basket. I don't know, I'm not sure if you guys, if everybody's aware of it. It's an e-grocer based out of India, one of the finest ones in the world at this point of time, and with amazing case studies, right from operational profitability to the kind of scale they've been able to achieve in India. And one thing the CEO talks about is saying no to jugaad. Jugaad essentially is you know fixing various things, deploying people to solve problems. It's just impossible for you to achieve the same day delivery kind of models efficiently if you don't say no to jugaad. You have to say no to jugaad. And I would urge everybody to read this book who's trying to do same day delivery, to be very honest, in Southeast Asia, because it talks about how these things are very critical when it comes to e-commerce same day delivery business models, and how can you make it operationally profitable. Um, Let me just try to cover this up quickly in the interest of time, and Fazal, then we'll go down to the questions, right? Um,
Yeah.
One of the most common fulfillment methods which we are seeing across Southeast Asia is dependence on parcel logistics, 3PL, 4PL players. And as the volumes increase, we move down to own fleet, right? The broker platform, which is very common, and I'm sure you would attest to it from a European perspective. That's probably a preferred model of fulfillment to rely on brokers. But in Southeast Asia, we have a mixture of parcel logistics versus own fleet, right? And we have put examples of two of the brands over here, Lazada and JD, right? And broadly 50-50% for Lazada is own fleet and outsourced. And if you go to JD, the ratio you can see in the chart, they rely a lot more on the 3PL platforms versus the own fleet, right? So there are various possible combinations. And towards the end of the call, we would urge, if you want to reach out and discuss at what size and scale should you look at own fleet or rely on parcel logistics, right? Um, if I kind of sum it up, what Fazil mentioned in terms of conclusion for what should people, it's essentially the three core things which is, according to us, and as Fazil also attested to that, the most common thing for you to focus on from a same day delivery perspective is to create a concrete process, to find a good agile tech which seamlessly integrates with that process, and to ensure that every stakeholder knows what their jobs and responsibilities are. And this doesn't mean the stakeholders should have to be within your company, but stakeholders, a customer is a stakeholder, a seller is a stakeholder, a third party logistics company is a stakeholder, and each of them in your process should have certain defined roles and responsibilities, certain defined SLAs, certain defined expectations, and then only this job of delivering shipments within few hours could be done in the most efficient manner. Um, so let's go down to questions, Faisal, and I think we have a lot of questions. So apologies in
Yeah.
advance if we are not able to cover all the questions. But Faisal, do you have any question you want to pick up from the list and answer? Else we can see if we can try to cover the entire lot.
Yeah, yeah. So let me first start off with the ones that are being up by many people. So I see one
Yeah.
question that's like by 13 people being upped. Are subscription-based model for faster same-day delivery is feasible or cost efficient? Very interesting question. So I guess from my side, when it comes to a subscription model, I guess that's something that Amazon also does with the Amazon Prime. It's actually a good thing. It triggers more transactions because uh, we also need to see, like, if, from a psychological standpoint, if a customer pays for a certain subscription, it triggers him or her to transact more, and that's actually what you want. You want to have that predictability that a person transacts more, and that's what you can do with the subscription based model because they already pay for it anyways. So why not transact? Because I need to have that return on investment. Because if I only order once, but I already certain pay a certain amount for it, it doesn't cover the cost that I had to pay for the subscription. So there's a lot of it could definitely help you in the cost efficiency. The only thing that you need to make sure and assess, that also answers one of the other questions, what's your actual cost to serve and what's the margin that you have on the goods that you're selling?
Yeah. But I'm not even sure if there are subscription models out there. Are you seeing the emergence of this or experimentation being done in this regard in the ecosystem, specifically in Indonesia?
No, I'm currently not seeing that at the moment in Southeast Asian region, but I'm seeing that mainly in the I'll say in the Western region.
Yeah. The other question, I can pick it up from the questions which has been voted 5 times, is the future of same day delivery for fresh and frozen products, right? I just wanted to give an example quickly over here. The brand we are talking about over here, Big Basket, it's actually a grocery e-grocery brand, right? And um, well, it's no longer about the future. This is becoming a necessity for grocers, both brick and mortar grocers as well as e-grocers, to be able to do same day delivery for fresh and frozen products. One thing I do want to add over here is we have not seen this happening in a marketplace scenario. We have seen this happening in a full stack inventory scenario, right? Um, and there has been innovations happening on the cold chain logistics front. We have seen the innovation of bikes and scooters in the metro cities, which are being innovated, the cold boxes being innovated to be able to do the same day deliveries, right? But once again, we have not seen that happening in marketplace scenario, but we have seen that quite prevalent in the full stack inventory scenario. Another question, Faisal, I think you answered that, but I will still want to address it. How to manage the cost of same day delivery? I think we covered it. Faisal
Yeah.
covered it pretty smartly by actually, challenging my assumption. And um, uh, I think, if Faisal, if you're okay, I would probably want to share your email address with people. They can drop a line to you in
Yeah,
case they want to talk
definitely.
more.
I want to
If
make
you're
one
okay with
correction
that,
though. Sorry. I want to make one correction on
absolutely.
my answer previous one. So when it comes to subscription model, so I was mainly looking this from a principal standpoint and brands owners. However, when it comes to subscription model, that's something that you also see in platforms, which we, for example, from Bukalapak actually have. So if you have a certain subscription, we actually provide you a free delivery, and that could also be a compensate for the people to transact on our platform. So yes, I do see examples of subscription models in Southeast Asia. Bukalapak itself, us.
Huh, awesome. And there are a couple of questions around same day delivery in segments, in other segments. Pharmacy is one of them, um,
Yeah,
like Halodoc in Indonesia. So if you look at some of the geographies in Asia in general, right, China and India including, pharmacy has already been one of the fastest growing e-pharmacy rather has been fastest growing segment, right? And I do see a scenario where I'm not sure about Indonesia because the healthcare system is massively controlled by government, but outside of that, in other countries, we see it's a matter of time where pharmacy will also get picked up in the same day delivery phenomena. There were a couple of other questions, Fazil. So one was when not to go or commit for same day delivery, and what are the two differentiators? Is it the tech, the 3PL capability, or the optimal blueprint? Right. I think this question on when to say no to customers for same day delivery, right? Would you want to give an
yeah,
attempt, a shot at it? I think this is a pretty interesting
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah,
How do you say no to
definitely.
customers?
How do you say no customer? Just make sure that your scope is correct. Because what we do see, there was one specific example in Indonesia, where one company commits to a delivery, same delivery all over Indonesia. However, he later came back with a statement: the more volume I get, the more I bleed. So people are trying to say, okay, hey, why? Because the more volume you have, because technically the more efficiency you can gain. However, that efficiency only stops at your warehouse. Once it goes into the last mile delivery and the orders are really dispersed, then that could actually have a huge impact on your logistical cost. So let's just make sure that if you need to say no on yeah, let's just do a Pareto. Do a Pareto where the majority of the orders is and you have that stable demand. That's where you can commit on that same day. It's something that we also do on our that we do, for example, for a certain division from our side. We hold a certain radius from a warehouse, and that's where we are able to commit the 24-hour delivery. If it goes outside that radius, then that would actually also be a certain area that we are technically not covering. So that's one quick
Yeah.
example. So you need to know, for example, myself ordering furniture. It could not be the case that when it comes to bulky goods, that you are always able to provide same day delivery. It's just not possible. Not many last mile delivery guys are willing to accept that order because one, the goods are very bulky and they're not able to consolidate that volume with other transactions. So the focus point
Absolutely.
is, how do you say no? Look at your density.
Yeah. No, and I think an associated question to that, and this is the last question, guys, is the question which got upvoted most was around the what are the various changes in supply chain which you need to bring to accommodate same day deliveries, right? And we talked about process, we talked about tech. What we didn't talk about was the network design, right? Like a very critical component of same day delivery is your supply chain network needs to be really interesting, right? Would you want to spend few seconds talk about what components of network design should people go about thinking and changing for them to enable same day delivery from a supply chain perspective?
So I guess to enable that, we need to make sure what's the actual lead time, right? So for example, you want to create your whole network design is okay, what's actually the actual lead time from your suppliers or from your other transit hubs? And if a certain lead time is there, then you just need to, one, limit your SKUs that you're actually willing to provide your same day deliveries on, and make sure that those are SKUs that you always have a stable supply on. And that's also one of the goods that's always being sold. And another one is, how do you make sure that based on the lead time that you can also create your inventory point and also determines how high your inventory point should be. So that's something that I will mainly use in the network design. Krishna?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, we're recovering. Sorry. It's okay.
Okay. Awesome. So no, I think network design critical element which completely gets missed in the discussion. But Fazil, I think we need to wrap up. We are about 6 minutes overshooting a time.
Yes.
But
Yeah, yeah.
I sincerely apologize for the late start. We all are trying to ensure that things are running from our homes in this scenario. Once again, wish everybody safety, um, and the entire Locust family prays that this scare of COVID-19 it goes away very soon, and we wish for the safety of you and your loved ones. And apologize once again for the overshoot by 7 minutes. I hope this was a good session, and we have your questions. We were not able to answer all of them, but we will reach out to you and see if we can answer that to you on emails. But Fazil, thank you so
Yes.
much for joining in. Any last words you have for the audience who joined in today?
I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webinar, and please feel free to reach out to me by email as shared by Krishna. Would love to have more detailed discussions with all the people here. For the rest, hope everyone a lot of safety and health during this period of time.
Yeah. Thanks everyone, and please do a survey will come. Please give your feedback so we can keep improving these knowledge sharing sessions. And looking forward to connect with each of you again soon on a similar webinar. Fazil, thank you once again, man. Cheers.
Thank you, Krishna. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Yes. Bye.